evening, Madridistas, watching from home and from your way back from work, wherever you are, on streaming platforms, YouTube, wherever it may be. This is Sahil, and I've got with me Farouk, who, well, circumstantially doesn't really have his video on today, but Farouk can say hi.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, unfortunately, from some technical reasons, we have to just do this. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully, it's gonna be
Um,
a good one.
but yeah, we're going to be bringing to you preview for match day 17, I believe, in La Liga. And Real Madrid visit Mendizorrotza to play Deportivo Alaves, who are 11th in the La Liga table. And this comes off the back of a very numb and disappointing 2-1 defeat at the hands of Manchester City. Um, I believe much of the fan base is still recovering from the after effects of that loss. But I've got Farouk here to discuss with me what could be a very, very crucial game in deciding the manager's future. We'll get into more of that, but yeah, Alaves, like any other team, are a tricky one in La Liga. What are your thoughts, Farouk?
Yeah, man, like it's quite insane. Like we have a run of two victories in the last 8 games. You look back to the game against Valencia, the 4-0 victory. You was basically rolling 5 points ahead of Barcelona, and nothing could have gone. Like I don't think anyone could have thought like we could, find ourselves 4 point behind a 9 point swing, and all of a sudden from being, almost guaranteed to qualify, now we're like seventh, basically on the periphery of being, rolled into the playoff phase of the Champions League. Like it's very, very, very contrasting fortunes. And I think a lot of managers have even been sacked for less at Real Madrid, like Xabi Alonso. Is being trusted by this board, but then also I do feel like he's really going through some things that are very similar to what Zidane went through. If you remember, like we had a lot of news about Zidane's going to get fired if this happens, if that happened, and then like there was a miracle victory here and there, and I think we're going to see something similar. And I think it's important. If you remember, Rodrigo scored very early in the game at the Bernabeu against Man City, and I think the gesture he made actually signified a lot, in my opinion. Like going and celebrating with the coach, and this is the coach who literally has left him out on more occasions than not. I think that signifies a lot. But then again, it's easy to sack the coach rather than sacking a team of 23 players. So this is just what the merry-go-round is, and it will be unfortunate if Xavi gets the boot. But then, honestly, like, yeah, how can you justify what we've seen with Xabi Alonso? People talk about a misbalance, people talk about this and that. I don't feel like this team is good enough. We have enough players here. Like, I mean, if you were to make a list of top 50 players in the world, I'm sure at least 10, 15 Real Madrid players are going to get in there.
Yeah.
So we're not this bad. That's absolutely, we're not this bad that we're going to go through this very bad patch. And I think this game is very, very crucial. But one thing I do know is that similar to what we saw under Zidane, these guys are going to step up, ease the pressure for a couple of games, and then we're gonna hopefully not go back. But I kind of feel like we're gonna go back into a cycle of again, being stuck. But I do think that the boys are gonna step up and show us what they're made of.
No, yeah, I should hope so because on more occasions than not, a lot of these players, well, haven't really shown up, with their A game when the lights are on and when the pressure is up. Um, Even with the Manchester City game, you could say, with the exception of Thibaut Courtois and maybe Alvaro Carreras and certainly Rodrigo, the rest of the team, everything was up for grabs. Man City, even with a very, very diminished looking squad, could come to the Bernabeu and snatch a victory with two very half-assed goals. Um, it didn't really feel as though those players, wanted to back the chat, even though, like as you mentioned, it was heartwarming to see that a lot of the squad. I mean, even Raul Asensio and Rodrigo and Courtois after the game, Jude Bellingham as well, spoke out and actually backed the manager in terms of his future and took responsibility for what is essentially a crisis now. Two victories in the last 8 games cannot be termed as anything less than that. And the thing with Xabi Alonso is that it's not stylistically we don't have an issue with him. We don't have a problem with what he's trying to implement. It's just his execution has been far from what we would have expected as Madridistas, because at this point in time, you just want him to be able to get a couple of victories on the trot, and no matter how they come, like it doesn't have to look beautiful, it doesn't have to look pretty for the fans. I'm sure most fans in the comments or those listening will agree with me, because we know that Xabi, if given enough time and continuity to back what he believes in and the kind of players he wants at the club, eventually the team will play the kind of football that he visualizes for us. But that is far from the issue. The issue lies in the dressing room. The issue lies with several of the players not being played in their favorite positions, be it by by as a matter of choice or not. Um, Several egos in the dressing room of I for sure know that several egos in the dressing room have clashed. So Xabi just hasn't been able to contain a lot of this, um, a lot of what has gone on apart from the football, and that's also very important at Real Madrid, a club which seeks to dictate the narrative in the media so much. So if the president and the board have left you out to dry like that, um, then it must mean that they're also they're also losing some of the confidence that they started the season with in this manager. Uh, but yeah, Alaves, I don't expect anything. It doesn't have to be a big scoreline either. It just has to be a victory, and Alaves are 11th in the table with a decent record. Actually, they come off the back of a 1-0 victory against Real Sociedad, which we know is not an easy opponent. But if you can tell us a little bit more about them, Farooq.
Yeah, actually, like you just talked about a bit about like what could happen uh, with the game. It's more about the fact that right now it's not about being fanciful or being what's he called? Yeah, not about being fanciful or anything. Because more or less, I think we've seen a lot of games. Like barring a couple of games, we haven't actually seen how this team can be. Like we haven't seen a lot of like impressive performances
Yeah,
uh, from this Real Madrid team. That's
exactly.
that's the point. So like, and
If it doesn't
when
come
you look
20
at
games into the season, then it's not going to come in a couple more games. Like that's my point here.
exactly, so when you look at that, actually, then it kind of brings you to the point that okay, right now it's about just okay, let's slowly get back to winning ways. Like forget about being trying to be fanciful, forget about the tactics, forget about trying to impose what's it called, your your ideology, right? So this is something that's very important. However, again, you're going to like a mid-table team, similar to the other teams that we've played as well this season, and at least in the last 8 games, where we have not been able to, successfully win the games. Because like this, all the teams we've played, actually, when you look at them, other than like not the Champions League games, but the league games, Bilbao actually was the toughest of them all, at least on paper, and
Yeah,
Bilbao was the best
and
performance
we
we
beat
had.
them. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly, right. So like, and then now you look at it, we're gonna play Elche again. I think they were very similar to. We're gonna play Alaves. They're very similar. Their position was very similar to that of Elche as well in the league. I'm not very sure,
and
but I
Celta.
mean, and Celta, exactly right. So now you're looking at a team who's got like I think 5 wins and 7 losses, something like that.
Yeah,
So it's a team that more or less is in the balance. You can see they're 11th in the table for a reason, because like they're a mid-table team more or less, and they literally defeated Sociedad 1-0 as well. So like they're coming off of a morale boosting a victory, and they've been very strong at home as well. With 14 points from 8 games. So like it's not necessarily the most easy uh it's not most necessarily the most easy of tasks, honestly, at least
yeah.
considering our recent form. And also this is a team that when you look at it on paper as well, like I mean, hasn't been really successful against Real Madrid, but then uh
Neither was Celta. Yeah,
exactly, neither was Celta as well. So like the point here is that to borrow Eric Ten Hag's words, eras come to an end. History, records are being broken and stuff like that. So it doesn't give you the most confidence. But then again, I do believe that uh, considering the what the atmosphere looks like and what the contest looks like, and I think also playing away from home. will kind of give the players a respite. I know it's very counterintuitive to say this, but I
Yeah.
do think like actually when you think of it logically from the perspective of how hostile Real Madrid fans can be, I think not having that pressure on the players at home, playing Alaves at their stadium actually could also be, you know,
Mm.
to the advantage of our players actually.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Because Real Madrid fans generally, when things go right, can be some of the one of the best atmospheres in the world, and possibly the best place to for those players to flourish. But in a position like this, I think they would take even a hostile fan base like Valencia to play away from home rather than our own fans having to boo us, which I think we saw a little bit of at the end of the Manchester City game, uh, and it isn't a pretty sight, honestly. Like Farouk, it's not something we would want to see. So I get your point, and I also get that Xabi Alonso will have to for once just get his players to be on the same page and play the most efficient way. Uh, in his mission to like churn out a victory. That's all, right? And at the moment, that's the most difficult thing with like a squad that is so rattled with injuries. And like our injury list, Farouk, is endless. Like I'm just going to read out now the number of players who are actually out at the moment, and it's actually a big list. So it's Dani Carvajal, Trent, Eder Militao, David Alaba, Antonio Rudiger. So again, no centre back options except I think Dean Howson and Raul Asensio. So Felamed is also out. Alvaro Carreras has a knock. Fran Garcia is red carded. No, Alvaro Carreras also I think is serving what suspension. Kamavinga is out. Endrick picked up a knock, and Kylian Mbappe's status over his injury is unknown because again he did not feature in the Manchester City game. So, but keeping all that in mind, I don't see how Xabi Alonso has the tools at his disposal, especially losing a player like Mbappe who has provided you with goals all season, and nobody has supported him. Let's be honest. So, do you think that's a bit of a problem, or do you think Mastantuono and Gonzalo Garcia up front will suffice tonight as well? And Rodrigo, of course.
Um, Absolutely, I hope they would, but like I mean, I don't think it's something to be taken lightly because uh, Kylian Mbappe has, I think, contributed to more than 60% of the goals we scored. Consider, if you combine assist and goals scored. So yeah, I think it's not something to be taken lightly. I mean, basically, Kylian Mbappe, that's taking on the role of what Cristiano Ronaldo used to be for us, or what Karim Benzema used to be for us. So I think it's not something to be taken lightly. And I'm not sure uh, uh, how much of how much in contention he will be for the game because he was on the bench against City, although he didn't play. And then of course we have the stupid suspensions that we have here and there as well. We know what it is also defensively where there is absolutely nothing, available as well. So I do think Rodrigo's goal was well taken. I think a player like Gonzalo Garcia also seems like a player that we saw what he can do at the Club World Cup. He's given the chance from the very start of the game, and Mastantuono at the beginning also before he got injured showed a lot of promise as well. So I think that could be something that these are players that could come into that provide a lot of support for the team, and I do think uh, you know going back to the traditional 4-3-3 might not actually hurt us honestly, uh, something like that. But yeah, let's. I do hope that like these players can step up and show something. But I do think it's not it's the absence or not of Kylian Mbappe is not something to take lightly.
Yeah, certainly, and I hope the players who certainly the 11 players who are fielded for the starting lineup do fight for the manager from the first minute because that is something that we haven't seen so far from Real Madrid. I mentioned this with Sinet the other day as well, when we spoke about the Manchester City defeat. Like that game it could have been an exception, because again it was a big night at the Bernabeu and in the Champions League as well. So our players are generally turned up for that, but I'm talking about like 85% of the season, which is all of the other games in which the players have less of an incentive to actually keep at it from minute one and keep closing down the gaps on the opposition players when they have the ball, and that desire to win the ball back and score a goal. I don't see it enough from the first few minutes of the game, and that's something that um, it makes me think that Real Madrid have become too much of a reactionary team in terms of their style and in terms of um, not just style, just attitude, I would say. Uh, and it concerns me honestly, because it's exactly these kinds of games. You mentioned Celta as well. Um, if an opposition is taking the game to us, and early in the game we have incentive to hit them back on the counter, all well and good, because then the game's actually direct and end to end. But if the opposition doesn't give us an inch in terms of you know letting down space, and if they maintain their shape and keep that low block, I think we find it very difficult to break it down. And Tony Cruz as well mentioned this in a podcast this week, that Real Madrid struggle to break down low blocks. So in a game which can easily get dull, not in terms of atmosphere, but in terms of the actual pace of the game. And I think Alaves are a team who have traditionally have had the ability to count on that ability of theirs, um, to slow down games, and if they get if they get lucky goal, then they have the ability to defend, um, and that's probably how they've been able to survive uh, all these years in La Liga as well. So I just worry for us in those moments of the game where we where the onus is on us to create something out of nothing, and even individual brilliance these days doesn't seem to save us so much. So what's your views on that?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, as you said, like I think this is actually something that's been there since even last year as well. We talked about this a lot. Like, low blocks are something that's very, very difficult for us to break down, and it's continued into the season. We just don't have that person that could actually uh, find that killer pass, that person that will make that threaded pass. We just don't have that person that can that has the key to the lock, more or less. Basically a Tony Cruz or something like that. And I think actually, like, maybe the goal now is that, like, to kind of focus on the aerial threat now, because we have the abilities, at least from. But then Trent also is injured. I was going to mention Trent. Like, we can focus on someone like Trent's ability to cross the ball, and try to find a player like Gonzalo Garcia using his aerial threat. Although Gonzalo is not the biggest player actually, but he's really good aerially, anyways.
Yeah,
So that's something that we could explore. But also, the thing now becomes like, you have to also have this ability to be able to beat your man one on one. And this is also something that we're seeing less and less of, our other like unsuccessful take-ons from our players as well these days. So like, if Vini is able to beat 1-2 players, like, all of a sudden you create space in front of you. You get the point. If Kylian Mbappe is able to beat 1-2 players, you're able to create space in front of you. So like, that individual brilliance that you're talking about eventually also has to help in breaking down these low blocks. It has to help, in how should I say, in like unlocking this defense, more or less. But then again, the problem is that what we're seeing less and less of that, because if you remember, the season where Vini was so successful was the seasons where, like, his take on rates were very high. The take on rate of Rodrigo was very high as well. So the ability to beat that first man actually creates an extra yard or two for you to be able to exploit with your pace. But that key thing is, firstly, beating that first or that second man, as well. And also, if you notice as well, one thing that we're very bad at is winning the second balls. Sometimes it's
yeah,
like we're playing with like 10 men, even sometimes look like we're playing with 9 men. There is a loose ball in the air, there is a header down, and all of a sudden, like, we just don't seem to have the capability of winning those second balls. And I think the ability to win that second ball also aids the transition, because sometimes you're like in random chaos, right? So when you win that second ball, you're able to immediately launch a counter attack or something like that with acres of space, because of the random disorganization or the chaos that's occurring there. But for some reason, I think in a lot of the games we've played across this 8 match stretch, we've not been able to successfully win those second balls, and it's really one of the things that's killing us.
yeah, certainly. I couldn't agree more, because if we don't see this team take the initiative more, then anything that even lasts a few games, any form that we can create will not last. I don't think anything is sustainable without actually taking charge of games in a very, very tight league such as this, because opponents in La Liga have adjusted and adapted their game according to what Barcelona and Real Madrid struggle against. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Alaves also try and slow the game down once they're in a comfortable position, which I'm sure it won't take them too long to be in. Once the initial momentum dies out, and at home um, they would be comfortable in keeping the game at that pace. But also something interesting that's just clicked as you were speaking. You said that we should probably revert to the 4-3-3, but I was just trying to rough up a lineup in my head, and I don't see any left backs available. Farouk, Fran and Carreras got sent off the other day. Mendy has been injured for a while, so has Alaba, and Kamavinga is also out with a long-term injury. So who is likely to start at left back? I don't think we've been in such a position with that particular position before in the season.
That's a very, very big question, honestly. I'm not really sure what it could look like, honestly, because maybe you play Asensio there as well as a jack of all trades.
Mm,
You play Raul Asensio there and you play Fede Valverde on the right.
right. So Rudiger is available, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So Rudiger, Hausen. So what would your lineup be if considering Valverde, Rudiger, Hausen, and Asensio, the back line?
yeah, as a back line. I mean, in the middle of the park, yeah, you're very limited with the options you have. I mean, you select Chouameni, you select Ceballos, and it's out regular. There's nothing more than that. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's the options you have, or like maybe you go uh, Chouameni, Güler, Bellingham, Chouameni, Ceballos, Bellingham. But I would just go considering the fact that we know that Kylian Mbappe might not be fully fit for the game, might start on the bench as well. So I'll go with like Valverde, Rudiger, Hoysen, Asensio, Güler, Chouameni, Ceballos, and then Bellingham, Rodrigo and Vinicius, basically like what we played in the Champions League winning season of Carlo Ancelotti, the second one, with Bellingham playing as a number nine, the false nine, whatever you want to call it. So basically, just a replica of that.
Um, yeah, I wouldn't do too much different, except I would actually give a run out to Franco Mastantuono, who's also now back from injury. That's a name we haven't taken in a while now, but I think he has the energy and just the enthusiasm to create something out of out of nothing, and we've seen him do that. It's just his productivity has um, let us down more often than not, and also Brahim Diaz. I'm not sure if he has left for the AFCON yet, but I would consider him, to come off the bench and play a crucial role if the game is, deadlocked after the 60th minute. I don't think Xabi has made good enough use of the squad depth that we actually have. And you said earlier in the episode that we actually have on paper some of the best players in the world. Um, and we have to consider the fact that a lot of those players haven't had regular, game time. Rodrigo being one of them, he put on an exceptional performance against Man City, something that even Pep Guardiola said was remarkable after not having played so much for so long. So that squad depth, I think, going forward is something that Xabi will have to make good use of, especially with our defense, which has. Uh, you would like to keep things very, very tidy and consistent with your defense. I get that, but we have defenders who are fragile as glass, Farooq. So we have to keep in mind that the likes of Milita, once he's back, I don't know when, Rudiger as well at his age, these guys need to be protected and they don't need to play every game. The same goes for Fede Valverde, who we seem to have run him out of steam so many times. So uh, at the moment we don't really have the luxury to make that choice, and that's unfortunate because of the injury situation. Um, but yeah, going forward, I just think that if Xabi can somehow get through this patch, um, successfully, and prove to the board that he actually has what it takes to um, you know keep him there till the end of the season, I think that will be a great boost, especially to the players, because if anything they said after the Man City game is something that they mean, if they actually mean it, um, especially for the senior players in the squad, and I'm considering Penny Bellingham, as part of this. Uh, if they actually back him, then I think they would fight for him for the remainder of the season. regardless of whether it looks pretty or not, or whether we score a lot of goals. I think we will see it. Um, but yeah, that's just my take on what the situation is right now. Um, what would your predictions be, Farouk?
I'm gonna go Guan Blazing and say a 3-1 Real Madrid victory. It's not gonna be look. It's as you. Completely agree with everything you said. It's not gonna look fine on. It's not gonna look fine. It's not gonna look, like. It's not gonna be all about the tactics or the movements or whatever the interplay. It's just gonna be about like these players fighting for the coach. That's
Yeah,
just the thing, and I do hope we see enough of that. And I think again that will. I think this will tell us a lot about also like how strong or like how true the reaction we saw from Rodrigo when he scored the goal was, like because if he's saying like they're backing the manager and like showing it on publicly that way, you
exactly.
know, they have to back this up on the pitch as well.
Yeah.
This is just the thing. So I think there is no better gauge of that than the game against, than the game at the weekend here against Elche. Alaves, sorry.
Alaves, yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And also, I'd like to bring up something that Karim Benzema said, this week after the Man City loss. He also mentioned that this team doesn't have someone they can look to and someone who can tell them what they're doing wrong, which is precisely, what a leader does. So I think he's implied that this team has a lack of leadership on the pitch. And I couldn't, agree more with that. It's not just about the captain's armband. It's not just about shouting when things go wrong. It's also about inspiration. I don't think that can come from the goalkeeper, as regardless of how good the goalkeeper is. Um, but they have to be leaders on this pitch, and some of the senior players. And like I said, I include Vinny and Bellingham in this, and Mbappe. They have to inspire those around them. They have to take that responsibility now, because it's now or never for Xabi. And in a couple of weeks from now, it could be wraps, right? It could be we could be talking about a different manager, and we all know what's going to happen then. It's going to be the same story, like played out. We're going to win a couple of games, and then the manager's going to be thrown under the bus for what the players do or fail to do out on the pitch. So me, like most of the fan base, doesn't really think that sacking Xabi is um, outrightly the best solution to what the situation is. Undoubtedly, he's made choices that have been appalling, and even uh, considering the fact that he's a young coach, I don't think those are the right choices for the Real Madrid coach to make. Um, but regardless of everything, I don't think this situation is completely on him, and the players agree, I'm sure. So yeah, no, I was gonna make a prediction. Well, I would say 2-1. We scrape by. Uh, I would like to be optimistic about this. Certainly more optimistic uh, than Ashik is here in the comments. He says 3-1 Alaves win. These players minus Fede Valverde and Vinicius Jr. will not fight for the manager. Um, well, the the evidence so far this season, when the toughest games of the season have come by, it suggests that you are right, Ashik, in saying that some of these players lack the character to actually fight for the manager. He also says that Vinny, Fede, and Jude will start. You can guarantee that. I don't disagree. It doesn't matter how bad they are, especially that clown Vinny. And if Vinny plays, we are going to be playing a man down. He'll be strolling. Yeah, I also wanted to take your opinion just as we start finishing, closing things up on Vinicius and how terrible he was against Man City. Not just that game, but the few games leading up to it. He has shown sparks of brilliance here and there, but he's just been overall so inefficient and so he's been lacking in all aspects of his game.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing you talked about efficiency, right? I think that's the important thing to note here. Like the efficiency is just not there. That's why earlier I touched upon about the ability to like beat your man. So while you have the slow box and all that, but if your wingers cannot isolate their players 1v1 and beat them, then there's a lot of problem that's going to go on because then it's like, okay, yeah, and I get the point that you're being double marked or something like that, but you have to have this because you're a superior player. You're a very talented player, one of the very best players in the world. So you have this ability to beat this player one on one. But the point is that the focus is not there sometimes with Vinicius Junior. He gets carried away and stuff like that, and especially with the whole controversy that's around him this year with the coach and like thereof. Like it's been showing in the game that I think I was seeing a stat that also was showing that even Kylian Mbappe was more efficient defensively than Vinicius Junior. So that's the point, is that like he's neither producing offensively nor defensively. You understand? So it's
Yeah.
because also I think he's gone goalless also, I think, in how many games as well. But I think he has a contribution in 7 or 8 games. I'm not very sure. So it's also like the bad spell of this 8 game we have is also coinciding also with the worst that he's shown as well. So in contrast, we could see what Rodrigo was attempting to do against Man City. Okay, albeit in a losing effort, but anyways, like, it was something that you could see, which you can contrast a lot to what Vinicius Junior was trying to do or was trying to offer. But the point is, Vini has to step up. Vini has to step up, or he's definitely going to lose that undisputed role that he has. So I don't know. I feel like eventually, if things do not change, it's either the club backs Vinicius Junior or the club backs the coach. So this is just a thing. And really, with the situation of Vinicius Junior, I do think it's something that goes way, way, way more than Xabi Alonso. I don't know how, even if, let's say, Xavi is eventually to leave, I don't know what's going to happen even with the next coach as well. Because I think Vini is someone that has been, overprotected and that has been enabled by the club itself. It's not just about, who's in the hot seat or not. It's about like the club itself has actually put Vini in this situation whereby he thinks that he's above reprieve. He's, untouchable more or less.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case with Vinicius Junior. Is one of the he was supposed to be the poster boy for this project, and he was pretty much for much of Carlo Ancelotti's tenure as Real Madrid coach. He was the face of this Real Madrid attack. He was the spearhead, and he took on much of the goal scoring and even the creative responsibility out on the pitch. But not everything has gone right for him as of late. And that would be an understatement, really. And I'm sure most of your fans here in the comments and those listening will realize that. And Alaves, like we mentioned earlier, is not a team that we should be taking lightly. They have a fair share of some of Spain's what was once considered Spain's finest talent. They have Denis Suarez. They have Antonio Blanco, who was actually from our ranks. Also Mariano Diaz, who has played for us. Lucas Boye is an excellent striker as well. So and also managed by Eduardo Codet. So do not take Alves lightly. Um, that's my closing message for tonight's preview. And just before I wrap things up with some of the housekeeping, I'd also like to mention and thank everybody who's actually joined into the stream. Shout out Ashik, who's always here to cheer us up, and everybody who's listening from across various streaming platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, wherever it may be. Um, Also big up our sponsors, Manscaped. Go check them out. Our affiliate code for Manscaped is LBR20, and you would get 20% off and free shipping as a result of that. And also, not to mention, this podcast is powered by the Talksport Fan Network, powered by the fans. Um, and yeah, like I said, big up everyone who's tuned in. Big up Farouk for actually coming out here on vacation, and doing this preview. Yeah, until next time, Madrid.
Hala Madrid.
All right, 33.